and Leon was just doing, all this kind of crazy stuff. And so Philip said, Leon, have you ever heard of the word respect? And Leon jumped up on the table, on the piano, and he said, Philip, have you ever heard of the word you?
History almost erased one of the most important people in Cher's career. While the spotlight stayed on the stars, Leon Russell was helping shape the sound of an entire generation from behind the scenes. Now, Cher is finally telling the story of the man she believes deserves far more credit than he ever received. So what did Cher finally reveal about Leon Russell? And why are fans only discovering his impact now? Join us as we uncover what Cher finally revealed about Leon Russell. The most important musician no one has ever properly heard of. Leon was one of the hidden architects of modern popular music. Long before he became a star in his own right, he was the musician producers called when they wanted magic in the studio. As part of the legendary Wrecking Crew, Leon played on an astonishing number of classic recordings, helping shape songs by artists like Frank Sinatra, the Beach Boys, Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, Ike and Tina Turner, and countless others. His unmistakable piano style became part of the sound of an entire generation, even though most listeners never knew his name. He wasn't only a performer. He arranged hit records, worked alongside visionary producers like Phil Spector, and quietly helped create some of the most influential recordings in music history. Yet while the singers stood in the spotlight, Leon and the other session musicians remained invisible, building the soundtrack of an era from behind the scenes. It was in those same Los Angeles studios that a young Sonny and Cher crossed paths with Leon Russell. Sonny and Cher recorded several Wrecking Crew-backed hits during their rise to fame. Their records, including I Got You Babe and The Beat Goes On, featured the backing of the crew. Many of Cher's solo records in the 1960s and early 1970s featured the same musicians. Sonny Bono had previously worked as Phil Spector's aide, which gave him direct access to the same network of session players that Spector was using to build his wall of sound. When Sonny and Cher began making records, they went to the same studios, worked with some of the same producers, and stood in front of microphones while Leon Russell and the rest of the crew played behind them. Cher has told a story about Phil Spector and Leon Russell that became a viral TikTok clip, and that captures something about what it was like to be in those sessions. The clip, which dates from the early 2000s, shows Cher describing the experience of being in Phil's studio as a teenager. She talked about the controlled chaos of the sessions, about Phil's odd habits, about the physical experience of being a very young woman standing in a room full of extraordinarily talented professional musicians, while a man who was already becoming legendary for his production methods shaped every sound around her. The detail she recalled about Leon in that story was about his presence in those sessions, the way he played, the way the sound he generated felt different from what everyone else around him was doing. What comes through in Cher's account of that period is not simply nostalgia for a formative professional experience. It is a recognition that she was surrounded by people who were better at their craft than almost anyone alive, and that Leon Russell was among the most impressive of those people. As Herb Alpert, who worked with Russell extensively during this period, put it, "Leon was a wonderful musician and had a major effect on all of my recordings. His touch can be heard on many Tijuana brass records." To top it off, Leon was a true gentleman with a special talent. That description, a wonderful musician and a true gentleman, is the way almost everyone who worked with Leon during his session years describes him. The talent was self-evident. The gentleness was something people noticed because it was genuine rather than performed. So Cher was in those sessions, hearing Leon play and absorbing the magic the Wrecking Crew was building around the voices that were being recorded. She was forming her own musical sensibility in rooms where some of the greatest pop production in American history was being made, and Leon was a consistent presence in those rooms. The connection between them was not personal in the way that it was professional. It was the connection of two people who shared a sonic universe at the exact moment both of them were becoming who they were going to be. But while Cher's career kept ascending, Leon's story took a direction that nobody around him had predicted. So what happened when the invisible session musician decided to step out from behind the piano and become a performer himself? And what did that look like when it actually worked? The man who stepped out from behind the piano. In 1970, Leon Russell did something that the session musician world had not seen at the scale he attempted. He organized and performed with Joe Cocker's Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour, a traveling rock and roll revue that was one of the most ambitious live performance experiments of its era. The tour featured an 11-member band, 3 drummers, and a 10-voice choir. It was Leon Russell's production and Leon Russell's vision, and it introduced him to audiences who had never known his name despite having heard his playing on hundreds of records. He wore a top hat and a long white beard and conducted the whole thing with a kind of pastoral authority that was simultaneously spiritual and completely rock and roll. A concert film and a hit live album documented the tour, and when it was over, Leon Russell was no longer invisible. His debut solo album, Leon Russell, released in 1970, featured Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, and George Harrison as contributing musicians. It established him as a solo artist of genuine weight. He played at the Concert for Bangladesh in 1971 alongside George Harrison, Bob Dylan, and Eric Clapton. His song, A Song for You, recorded on that debut album, has since been covered by more than 200 artists and named one of the greatest songs in American popular music. His Tight Rope went to number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1972. In 1973, Billboard named him the top concert attraction in the world. The top concert attraction in the world. In 1973, Leon Russell, the session musician who had been anonymous for a decade, was briefly the most commercially successful live performer on the planet. Then the 1980s arrived. Tastes changed. The American, gospel-influenced, blues-rooted, country soul hybrid that Russell embodied fell out of commercial fashion in ways that were rapid and brutal. He continued working. He maintained a bus, a band, and a touring schedule. But the crowds got smaller. The record deals got worse. The venues got more modest. The man who had been everywhere in the 1960s and early 70s, who had played on hundreds of hits and then sold out arenas under his own name, was driving a bus around America, playing whatever rooms would have him. He said once that he felt the world had cheated him big time with the cerebral palsy he was born with. He had used the same logic to explain how music had saved him from that feeling. But by the mid-2000s, the man who had made his peace with the physical circumstances of his birth was watching his career circumstances arrive at a similarly diminished place, and doing it with considerably less equanimity. The person who finally saw this clearly enough to do something about it was not Cher. It was Elton John. And what Elton John did for Leon Russell is one of the genuinely beautiful stories in the history of popular music. So what happened when Elton John was on safari and started crying? And where did that moment lead? The album that saved Leon Russell's legacy. In January 2009, Elton John and his partner David Furnish were on safari in South Africa. David was listening to Leon Russell's retrospective album. Elton John heard it, and he started crying. What happened in that moment, on safari in South Africa, with Leon Russell's music playing, was a reckoning. Elton John had grown up in England absorbing American music through recordings. and Leon Russell's piano playing on the Wrecking Crew sessions had been a formative part of what he heard. When he arrived in the United States for the first time in August 1970 and played the Troubadour Club in Los Angeles, Leon Russell was in the audience. Leon came backstage and the two men went to Russell's home and sat at the pair of pianos he kept there and played together. A friendship formed that was based entirely on mutual recognition of a shared approach to the instrument they both loved. Elton John has said that Leon was a mentor and an inspiration. He called him his biggest influence from that era. He told NPR, "He is a better piano player than I am." When he was crying in South Africa, listening to the retrospective album, what he was feeling was the distance between what Leon had been and what he had become. The loss of a musician who had been the top concert attraction in the world, being reduced to driving a bus from gig to gig at modest venues, while his music circulated on a greatest hits compilation on a Safari playlist. He reached out to Leon immediately. He proposed a collaborative album. He said what he wanted, directly and specifically. He wanted Leon Russell's name written in stone. He wanted him in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He wanted his name on everybody's lips again. The album they made, The Union, was recorded in early 2010 and produced by T-Bone Burnett, who had also produced Robert Plant and Alison Krauss's Raising Sand. It reached number 3 on the Billboard 200, making it Russell's highest charting album since 1972's Carney, and one of Elton John's highest charting studio albums in decades. Rolling Stone named it one of the 5 best albums of 2010. They played 30 concerts together across the US and London. At the 2011 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony, Elton John inducted Leon Russell personally. In his induction speech, Elton said, "I said to him, I want people to acknowledge you for what you have done, to remember you for what you've written, what you've played on, and for you to be proud again of what you've done. And I want you to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame." And here we are a year later, and he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Leon, who had spent years selling low-budget albums on the internet and playing ramshackle blues clubs, received a standing ovation at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony. The last song on the Union was called The Hands of Angels. Leon wrote and sang it as a tribute to Elton John for what John had done. He said, "I wanted to give him something for doing this for me. What do you give a guy who has 6 fully staffed houses and 10 of everything else in the world? I thought I could give him a song." The image of Leon Russell writing that song, knowing that the man who had pulled him back into public consciousness deserved something, and sitting down and giving him the only thing he had that Elton John could not buy, is one of the most moving details in this entire story. So after this remarkable late-career revival, what happened next, and how did the story end? The death that brought everything into focus. The last 6 years of Leon Russell's life were not simple. The health challenges that had defined his life from birth continued to accumulate. He had undergone open-heart surgery, and the recovery from it had been difficult. He continued to perform. He continued to record. He was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in the same year he entered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 2011, making it the most formally recognized year of a career that had been extraordinary for 50 years. In 2016, he was working on a new album, a collaboration with jazz musician Benny Carter that remained unfinished at his death. On November 13, 2016, Leon Russell died in his sleep at his home in Nashville, Tennessee. He was 74 years old. The cause of death was not immediately disclosed by his family. When Elton John heard the news, he posted on social media, "My darling Leon Russell passed away last night. He was a mentor, inspiration, and so kind to me. Thank God we caught up with each other and made the union. He got his reputation back and felt fulfilled. I loved him, and always will. If the safari had happened a year or two later, if Elton had not reached out when he did, if Russell had died before the union was made, his legacy would have been the legacy of a musician's musician, known inside the industry and invisible to the public. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction would have been posthumous, or not at all. The standing ovation in 2011 would not have happened. He would have died, still driving the bus. So now, with all of that context established, what does Cher's specific contribution to this story actually look like? And what was she saying when she finally spoke about him openly? What Cher said, and what it reveals about who Leon Russell was. Cher's relationship to Leon Russell is the relationship of someone who was shaped by a musical environment and who carries the memory of the people in that environment as formative rather than merely professional. She has not given a single extended interview devoted entirely to Russell. What she has done is speak about him in the way that people speak about the foundational influences of their artistic lives, with the specific warmth of someone recognizing a debt that is real and large. The TikTok clip that went viral, showing Cher describing her experience with Phil Spector and specifically mentioning Leon Russell in connection with those early Wrecking Crew sessions, captures something essential about what those sessions meant to the people who stood in the middle of them. The quality that Cher identified in Leon, the thing that made him different from the other session musicians she was surrounded by during that period, was the feel of his playing. Leon's piano did not just keep time or fill harmonic space. It moved. It breathed. It had a physical presence in the mix that you could feel before you could consciously identify it. The gospel, blues, and country traditions that he had absorbed growing up in Oklahoma were present in every note he played, and they gave the records he appeared in a warmth and a rootedness that purely technical proficiency could not have generated. Cher knew this. She said it in the way that someone says something they have known for a long time, and that they have not previously had the right context to articulate publicly. The viral circulation of that clip is partly a reflection of how little known the Wrecking Crew remains to general audiences, and partly a reflection of how much Cher's specific observations about the period resonate with people who love music and who want to understand where the records they love actually came from. What she was doing, essentially, was the same thing Elton John had done in a more formal and more elaborate way, naming Leon Russell in a context where he deserved to be named, adding her voice to the account of who he was and what he contributed, making sure the record, in both senses of the word, was complete. Cher and Elton John weren't simply celebrating a legend. They were pointing toward a catalog that had quietly shaped American music for decades. So what exactly did Leon Russell leave behind? The songs he left behind. The case for Leon Russell's importance to American music does not rest on his celebrity. It rests on the catalog. And the catalog is staggering in its breadth, its quality, and its reach into the work of artists who have been more publicly celebrated than he was. A Song for You, which he wrote and recorded on his 1970 debut album, has been covered by more than 200 artists across multiple genres. Ray Charles recorded it, Donny Hathaway recorded it, Willie Nelson recorded it, Amy Winehouse performed it live, Whitney Houston sang it. The Carpenters took it to number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100. Leon's own version is the one that sits at the root of all of them, a solo piano and voice recording that is among the most bare and most emotionally exposed things he ever committed to tape. Delta Lady, which he wrote for Joe Cocker, became one of the most recognizable songs associated with that artist. Tight Rope was a top 20 hit for Leon himself. He wrote Superstar, which was recorded by the Carpenters and became one of their signature recordings. He organized the concert for Bangladesh in 1971, which was the template for every subsequent benefit concert in popular music history, the direct predecessor of Live Aid, and every event that followed from it. He also produced and played in recording sessions for an extraordinary range of artists. His Grammy nominations across his career totaled 7. He received 2 Grammy Awards. His 6 gold records represent the portion of his solo work that achieved formal commercial certification. The real measure of his influence is not in these numbers, but in the acknowledgments from the people who followed him. Which part of Leon Russell's journey surprised you the most? And do you think he finally received the recognition he truly deserved? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.